Yo, what is going on, everyone in the crypto space? So today I'm going to be giving you the full, complete tutorial, the complete walkthrough of Ripple, the current banking problem, how it solves it, why it may rise in value in the future, and what really holds in the future for the international banking system, and why Ripple could definitely get its good fair market share within that system. So basically just going to be the full everything you need to know. If you're watching this video and you absolutely know nothing and you just heard of it and you kind of know what's going on, this video is perfect for you, and I suggest you watch the entire thing. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and explain first off how the current banking system works if you're going to send a transaction, if the transaction is going from one country to another, also known as a cross-border payment. So this is how it will work. So let's say you got the bank over here that's in the US, and then a party from this bank wants to send money from the US all the way to Japan. So now here's the process. So right here you would have the no, what's it called? No, not that. You'd have the sender and then the receiver. I'll just put R for that. So you got the sender from the US bank, the receiver from Japan. So this is what would happen. So the sender, he officially completes the wire and says, yep, send this money to Joe in Japan. What would happen is the money goes from the US banking system. It first goes through the Federal Reserve, and after that goes into the US correspondent bank, otherwise known as a Nostra account. So it goes from the original bank to the Federal Reserve, then to the correspondent bank. Then after that, they go through what is known as the Forex market, or the foreign exchange market, where the two currencies are, you take the US dollars, then convert it into the yen. So once it's through the Forex market, it goes to this bank's correspondent bank, then goes to that bank's Federal Reserve, and then finally reaches the destination. So everything you're seeing here, this all costs the bank money. That's why I believe a cross-border transaction, I think, costs around $100. I don't know if it's that exact amount, but I know it is very hefty to send, to wire money from one country to another. As you can see here, literally everything, the Federal Reserve, the US correspondent bank, through the Forex market, through that correspondent bank, through the Japan Federal Reserve, then finally to the bank. That costs a ton of money. And this all takes people. Let's do a little stick figures for this one. Messed up stick figure, whatever. This all takes manual manpower to move the payment through. So they're losing money in transaction costs as well as labor cost. Rather than, not saying it would get rid of their jobs, but it could use those people for a more efficient and more productive task. So it costs them a ton of money, and it costs them a ton of manpower, and it does cost a lot of time. Best case scenario, I mean, the absolute best case scenario, this transaction would take 3 days and can take upwards of a week. Just for one payment. Literally, right now, with the way technology is and how we're slowly, actually no, we're rapidly moving into the digital age. Look at the last 10 years and compare it to where we are now in terms of technology. So we live in a society to where we can send a message to someone from US to Japan literally in seconds. An email. Through an email, you can send a message in seconds. But payments are still taking upwards of a week, or best case scenario, 3 days. Now tell me what you see wrong with that. How come we live in a society of advanced technology and a cross-border payment is still taking a couple days up to a week? So now, this is where Ripple comes in. Ripple completely eliminates this entire process. Just eliminates it, it's gone. Completely eliminates that. Now what Ripple does is Now, if these two banks were connected through the Ripple network through XRapid, and XRapid is the settlement technology which utilizes the currency XRP, which you can invest in to settle a transaction between the two parties. So let's say this US bank and this Japanese bank, they are both a part of the XRapid liquidity network. If you don't know what liquidity is, liquidity, in the most simplest form I can explain it, it essentially means how fast you put up an offer or you put up a transaction or whatever it may be, and it can just happen in that second. Like, for example, real estate. A house is not like liquid cash. If you wanted to sell your house, it's going to take you, a month, 2 months, 3 months, maybe a year, depending on your price. So it's not liquid. But, for example, if you have something like cash, cash is liquid. You can take it instantly and go spend it. But something like real estate is not liquid. It's going to take time. Now, liquidity really relates to speed. How fast can you make an offer or set up a transaction, and how fast can it complete and turn into liquid cash? So the US bank and the Japanese bank, both on the XRapid network, as an example. What it would do is XRapid directly connects the US bank to the Japanese bank through the Ripple net, or XRapid. Alright, not very good spelling because I'm using my mouse. Basically, RippleNet/XRapid kind of means the same thing, but more specifically XRapid. So it takes it from the US bank through the XRapid network to the Japanese bank. And by utilizing XRP, it would basically take the US dollar, convert it into XRP, and then take the XRP and then converts it into the Japanese yen through the liquidity network. So it goes from the US bank, the currencies all convert autonomously, quick and cheap, without any manpower, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The US dollar to XRP, then to XRP, back into the yen, and then it goes straight to the bank. And if you don't know how fast this process is, on average, it literally takes about 4 seconds. 4 seconds. So how do you think an industry is going to react to a product that can take a 3-day settlement, turn it into 4 seconds, and on average cut the costs by 60%? Tell me how much of a disruptive technology is. From 3 days to a week to 4 seconds, and cutting that cost by 60%, allowing new revenue opportunities for the bank. And also, this eliminates what we know as no-show accounts, or a pre-funded account. And right now, as we speak, there are $27 trillion right now sitting in no-show accounts, sitting just dormant capital, not doing anything, not going into the economy, not paying investor dividends, not expanding business. It's $27 trillion worldwide of money just sitting in no-show accounts doing nothing, not being unleashed into the economy and helping growing world economies. So it takes this process, solves a $27 trillion problem, cuts a 3-day transaction to 4 seconds, and cuts the cost by 60%. So tell me why a greedy banker would not want this process for their bank. So now think about how disruptive that technology is. Now, everything I showed you here is for a cross-border payment. This is from one border to another. Now, let's get into the process of domestic payments. So for domestic payments, they use the RippleNet again, but they use something called Xcurrent, which doesn't utilize XRP because it's essentially a payment with the same fiat currency. It's not one fiat currency to another. It's just sending US dollars to US dollars. That's it. So what it would do now through the Xcurrent network, if you were to go from bank A to bank B and they both exist in the US, you would use the Xcurrent messaging system, which then takes the capital from this bank and moves it to this bank. It's simple as that. All Xcurrent is a messaging system basically saying, yep, bank A, it sent it to bank B, clear, transaction's done. So that's what Xcurrent is. Domestic payments, you know, you can't do them on Sundays unless you go online, or past certain times the payment won't be sent out. But basically, in my experience, wiring money to an exchange that's actually here in the US, Coinbase for example, it literally took about a whole day, I think even 2 days, just to get my money into their bank. Now the time it took to credit the money in my account, that's all in there, and that has nothing to do with Ripple. But taking the current domestic payment system and utilizing a new network through Xcurrent, basically just a messaging system, it creates the process a lot faster. Now Xcurrent, I'm not exactly sure on how fast the payment takes. I believe I heard it's about a minute, and they can save now 30%. Hold up, no. Now they can save 30% on a domestic transaction. So through Xcurrent, they can save 30% on a domestic transaction, and then 60% on a cross-border transaction. Now they can also utilize Xcurrent with cross-border transactions, but they would just save 30%, but they wouldn't have the liquidity or near the speed because it's between two currencies. But mainly Xcurrent is more for domestic payment, XRapid built for cross-border payments. So yeah, that's basically it. They save 30% on domestic transactions and then 60% on a cross-border transaction. But really, domestic payments isn't Ripple's target here. It's the cross-border market that really has the most problems and where the most capital is sitting. It's just sitting dormant. So now, let's get into Ripple's current progress. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at the Ripple site, down here you can see some of their biggest partners. Mitsubishi Bank of Tokyo, worth about $3 trillion in assets. Santander, I believe it's like the 18th largest bank in the world. Standard Chartered, Westpac. Credit Agricole, 9th largest bank in the world. SBI, Remit, MoneyGram, American Express. There's also Western Union. They have 100+ customers, and they're mostly testing Xcurrent. But we have, I think it's 6 or 7 companies that are actually trialing XRapid to use XRP, because a big debate in the crypto community is that they're just going to use Xcurrent but not XRP. But it doesn't make sense to me why a bank wouldn't want to save an additional 30% and get a faster transaction just to use the currency. So it really doesn't make sense. The argument is invalid for me when I hear people say, oh, they're never going to use XRP. They will. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind they're going to use XRP. Why wouldn't they save another additional 30%? If you owned let's say you owned a food business and some guy, whatever, creates a machine that could save you 30% for a fast food restaurant, why would you not want to save that additional 30%? It just doesn't make sense for a business. As a business, you're going to take as much opportunity as you can to save money. So now, let's get into why XRP may rise in value. Like we talked about, you have the $27 trillion sitting in dormant capital, doing nothing for society. And also, what's going to happen when XRP comes into play is that you'll have people called market makers that will be utilized through the XRapid network, also known as a third-party liquidity provider. So the banks can either hold the XRP if they want to take on small volatility that may occur, or they could use a third-party liquidity provider that's willing to take the risk for profit. So essentially, the bank can use a market maker, a liquidity provider, or hold the XRP themselves. Now, the reason it would rise in value in the future is just what I stated. When XRapid, if it ever becomes widely adopted, I truly believe it will. You just got to look at how much of a breakthrough technology it is and how fast society will evolve, or not evolve, will adapt to new technologies. It's kind of a no-brainer. So, if that ever happens, let's say we have 50 banks that want to go live on the XRapid network. Now, when that would get announced, first of all, that just retail investors alone would drive up the market. Retail investors being just people like you and me, just wanted to invest a couple thousand, make some money, just the basic thing, right? So retail investors would really drive it up on the news alone. But also, now that there's news coming out that these banks want to launch on XRapid, that's where market makers would load up on the XRP and end up buying a good amount of the supply and storing it for themselves because they predict it'll rise in value. Plus, they can use their system to work with banks. Now, also, banks can hold XRP and get rid of the money makers. So, if banks want to hold XRP or money makers want to hold XRP, it's creating institutional demand for the currency. Right now, it's sitting at around 83 cents. And personally, that is very undervalued for a currency that's potentially going to be used on a global scale. So the reason why mainly it would rise in value is because when all these banks are buying XRP, or when market makers or liquidity providers will be buying XRP, that would bring substantial volume into the market, bringing in institutional capital, and the volume alone would just drive up the price. And when you have a full-fledged banking system or an industry system functioning off of that currency, that will create demand across so many different hedge funds, you know, Morgan Stanley, stockbrokers. I mean, anything. It really just create all the retail and institutional demand once banks and market makers decide to buy up XRP for transactions. Now, why would they want to buy up XRP for transactions? It's the same reason cutting that week-long transaction to 4 seconds and saving 60% off of that currency. So that's why it would really rise in value. Is because all that volume and demand coming from the actual usage of the currency. With things like Bitcoin, there's not too much. I mean, there is a use case. I just bought GTA 5 with Bitcoin recently for my PC. But the thing is, I still had to pay a $4 fee, and I had to wait 30 minutes for the transaction to close. So the fact that Ripple has that instant on-demand settlement, that's the reason why banks, market makers, liquidity providers would buy it up, as well as retail investors in speculation. So there you have it. That is pretty much everything you need to know about Ripple. Just the basics, the fundamentals on why you may want to invest in this currency. There's really not much to talk about more than that. That's basically the problem that Ripple is trying to solve. And you can see with their proven track record of all the partners they have now, why people project it as being a successful currency to invest in at some point in the future. So thank you guys for watching this walkthrough of the currency. I really hope you gained a lot of information on it. To really spread the word of this currency, what it's trying to do. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for watching this video. If you do want to support the channel, check the links in the description. You can pick up a Ledger Nano S, or if this was a lot of help to you, you can donate some XRP if you like. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to stay tuned for the next one.